any technology that's sufficiently advanced looks like magic. Anything that's outside of our realm of understanding, outside of our paradigm, looks like magic. And that's exactly why somatic psychology or body psychology looks like magic. It's because it's quite literally outside of the way that our brain and our thoughts are limited. The basis of our culture, so much of our culture is based on Descartes' notion of I think, therefore I am. And there's this whole other world of experience. It's actually much deeper and has a lot more potential for healing. And so when we access somatic dimensions, when we get into the body, it can feel very magical because it's outside of our paradigm, outside of our worldview. And so I'm going to show you today some basic understandings of how to facilitate magic and how somatic psychology facilitates what looks like magic. It's actually deeply rooted in nervous system process, and we'll get the science eventually. But there's a couple simple practices, simple understandings that can help you shift from being locked in all kinds of patterns of dysfunction, patterns of pain, chronic pain, psychological pain. Anytime you have feeling imprints, your body's holding on to something that happened in the past, there's ways in which we can let those things go. There's necessary suffering in life. We lose people. Things happen that ideally they wouldn't, but there's loss in life. Things happen that can really hurt us. And that's necessary. Like there's necessary suffering in those things. And then there's unnecessary suffering, which is the way in which we carry traumas that we don't need to, the way in which those feeling imprints stay stuck in our nervous system. Those kind of traumas or overwhelming feelings can stay stuck. And so with just a couple practices, you can start to move them. You can start to alchemize them. Alchemy is just the process of transformation. So think different kind of intelligence equals nervous system alchemy. It's not just going to be from your thinking mind. Our thoughts are inherently limited. And there's actually some spiritual states that you just can't access just through thought. They've got to be realized in the body. Hi, I'm Daniel. I've been in the field of somatic psychology for about 18 years. I've apprenticed with and then taught alongside world experts in trauma, attachment, somatic work, my master's degree in somatic work, and then other postgraduate trainings that have helped train hundreds of therapists in approaches to trauma healing using the body, using the nervous system, and actively train therapists in somatic attachment work. If all that sounds interesting and you want to learn more about it, make sure to like and subscribe this video. It means the world. Thank you so much for your support. So we're in this situation where our culture has really elevated the thinking mind, which is largely neurotic, but we've mistaken inspired thought that comes from a divine place, for thought altogether. So there's no wonder so many of us are lost. We're all listening to kind of the wrong kind of intelligence, our thinking mind, which has these inherent flaws. It tries to fill in the gaps. It's basically a pattern recognition machine. So it's trying to work off of your history and prevent pain, prevent the bad things from happening again. And so it's feeding you fear. It's feeding you your history, and it's not working so well. Our whole culture is really set up to try to dissociate from the intelligence of our body and move into our mind. Now, I believe that's because there is such thing as inspired thought. There are thoughts that come from a divine place or seemingly divine place, like the thoughts when you're in the shower or you're in some other kind of flow state, and then you just get that sudden realization. You can solve the problem. I call that inspired thought, or thoughts that come from a divine place. I'd love to hear if you have any experiences of inspired thought, or when you feel your thoughts are coming from a deeper, intelligent place. Let me know in the comments. I genuinely would like to hear from you and have that conversation. I also have a system for how to get more inspired thoughts, to have those moments happen more often. And so if you're interested, definitely let me know in the comments and I'll think about making a video about how to do that. There's some simple practices. So we've kind of mistaken inspired thought, these thoughts that are really pure, that come from a brilliant place, even a divine place, for our regular everyday thinking mind. Our thinking mind is largely based off of pattern recognition, right? It's in some ways our ego, in some ways the thinking mind is constantly trying to keep us safe. It's trying to make sure that bad experiences we've had in the past don't happen again. And so, of course, it gets neurotic. And a lot of times it's not grounded in reality. It's the reality of now. There's some therapists that their trick, that their whole way of helping people is just to identify, oh, it's a story. My mind is making up stories. The mind constantly tries to fill in the gaps, constantly is making up stories. Maybe you've seen this image of this triangle that it just shows the edges of it, and your mind fills in the gaps. That's how our mind works. So it makes up all these stories, and many times those stories, the vast majority of the time, especially if the stories are charged with some kind of anxiety, they're actually incorrect, or they're not the whole picture. And so this thinking apparatus, this way that we think defensively, the way that we can think with kind of a charge or anxious charge, how the mind can ruminate, that's a kind of intelligence, sure, but that's not the kind of intelligence you want governing your life. Or if you're a therapist or practitioner, that's not the kind of intelligence you want running your show. Being so consumed in our thoughts on the phone, on the computer, all that, and if we're in our mind so much, it's exhausting. It can feel exhausting to think. And it is using a ton of energy in your nervous system. The thinking mind consumes so much energy. But what if I told you that there was a way to ally with and harmonize with a deeper intelligence in your body that can then very much look like magic? And it feels so magical because instead of it being so much work, everything feeling like work, having to push yourself through, you can actually relax. That stressed out part of you, that thinking mind that's grasping to things, can actually relax and trust in a deeper, what I believe to be divine nature, which is an intelligence of your body. So there's a couple ways to start working with it. And one of them I just saw marketed as quantum healing. And that's just really, to me, it just felt like this repackaging of things we've known for a long time. So they're talking about working with polarity. We've been doing that in somatic psychology for seemingly forever, for many decades. And then it goes back even further than that. I mean, it's in Tonglen practices in Tibetan Buddhism. It's in ancient Vedic and Hindu practices, this idea of working with polarity. Where you have what seems like opposites. So pleasure, pain, expansion, contraction, right? And the idea here is that your system is constantly moving in rhythms. It could be the rhythm of expansion and contraction, and it gets stuck. Or pleasure and pain, and the fluidity is health. But when we get stuck, that's where dis-ease is created. Simply by moving between what seems like opposites, both sides of the polarity, you can actually start generating what feels like magical-esque shifts. I'll tell you, one of the very first practice clients I had was consumed with anxiety, had all these problems, couldn't hold a relationship, all these issues. They were actually abused horribly by their older brother. And we got this movement going in his body, this oscillation, this movement between polarities, right? Don't stay too long in one. So a lot of times with a situation like that, it's really easy to get stuck in this kind of vortex where we get sucked down into all the negative, into the really horrible, awful feelings. And instead of doing that, this client felt the other side of that, which is empowerment. If you really want to facilitate magic, you want to see magic, it's got to be what seems like magic. It's more about listening to the body and letting the body to tell the story, letting the body unfold its own way of healing. And so instead of this practice client being feeling disempowered and small, they had more of an active response and they fought back. They had this experience of fought back. And I'll tell you that what happened, I haven't told anybody for many years because I thought nobody would believe me. But client went into shaking. So the shaking can be a trauma release. If you just do the shaking, like there's some exercises where you just get your body to shake, it's just a temporary relief. You actually have to activate the memory It has to be a more body memory has to be more activated. And then the shaking really needs to occur naturally as a result of something else. And so that's what happened. So his body was shaking. This energy was moving out. And then a handprint came out of his arm as if someone had been holding his hand, his arm, his forearm. See if the camera can show it. So it's like deeply squeezing, and then this clear handprint came. He wasn't holding his arm. I wasn't holding his arm, but a handprint actually came out of his skin. Now, I was quiet about that because I thought, and experiences like that, I just quiet. People kind of will throw up like black goo, these different experiences like that. Just, I'm not trying, there's so much spiritual competitiveness. There's so much stuff like that. I'm not trying to do any of that. No one's going to believe me anyway. But more recently, I've heard from other practitioners that have had similar experiences. It's actually more common than you think. But in order to get there, you have to step outside of just the thinking mind, the part of you that wants to figure everything out, the part of us that thinks it knows. And we have to default into a deeper intelligence in our bodies, in our clients' bodies, and let that intelligence move through us. So you're not going to get there just by doing a step-by-step process. I would be very surprised if you could get there by doing a step-by-step process. This is how you do somatic work. You have, first when you learn somatic work, you learn somatic psychology. You need to kind of have a formula. Okay, here's a general gist. But at a certain point, you need to let that go. And you need to operate from a deeper intelligence. And so as a practitioner, if you're somebody curious about becoming a practitioner, you are a practitioner, you really need to do your own work so you can actually get out of your own way. So you're not getting stuck. You're not getting blocked in yourself and your thinking mind. And you can let these things flow. And that's where some magic will come in. But if you really want to start learning this work, if you want to start learning how to facilitate what seems like magic, other paradigm work where you're outside of the ordinary paradigm, you can do it very easily by starting to just track the breath. Just notice breathing patterns. You can notice them in yourself, but notice them in others. And what I recommend to some of my students is actually go out in public, go somewhere that's really populated, where you can sit in peace and hide behind a book or your phone, whatever, but have some sunglasses on, but really be studying the bodies of everybody moving past you. And see if you can notice the breathing patterns. Notice if you can see, where does the breath get stuck? You do it at a coffee shop too, and sometimes it's helpful. You can start to see these things out of the periphery. So if you look dead on, sometimes our mind gets fixated. But if you just try to see out of your periphery, sometimes you can even see energy that way. If you never have before, that's a way you can start. But notice the breathing. And if you're working with clients already, notice their breathing patterns. When does their breath start to get more rapid? How long is each breath? What's the duration? What are the patterns here? And then see if you can notice, where's the breath not going in the body? Where does it feel stuck? Where does it feel constricted? Because that's information about ways in which they're stuck. While you're doing it, I highly recommend you also look at posture and tell you, what's the posture of this person saying? What's their body saying? What's their breathing saying? Is their breath frozen, meaning they're not breathing very much? Is it rapid? Is it like a little under-oxygenated? Like there's way too little breathing? Maybe they're in a collapse state, right? So freeze is like energy is right there underneath. So freeze it has more of a rigid quality to it, where the breath can be frozen. They're not breathing much. It's hypoxic, meaning there's not that much oxygen in the blood. And then there can also be a different quality of breath, more of a collapse, where it's the system's breathing. I mean, we have to breathe, but it's very slow, and there's not a rigidity on top of it. Or is it intense, like a rapid breath, like a little, like they're doing something? Like if you're not actually doing some kind of activity, but your breathing is really fast, you're most likely dealing with some kind of anxiety. There's something troubling going on in your system, or maybe you're under pressure. You feel like there's some kind of performance. But it tells you so much about a system. And then the thing to really notice about breath is look for the transitions. If you're working with people, look for when the breathing rhythm changes, because that tells you everything you need to know. And when you do that, people will already think you're magic if you're a practitioner. But you're not, really. It's just a physiological process, but they're just not aware of it. So it seems like magic. But when you track the breathing rhythm and it starts to change, maybe it's been stuck, they've been not breathing, and then they start to take a deep breath, right? Most people don't even notice that that's what's happening, but that gives you a clue as to what's happening in their system, in their state. And so you can reflect it to them. You could say, oh yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, do you feel that starting to shift? And then they'll go, what? Like, how did you see that? That's magic. And really it's not, you could explain it. Oh, it's just I'm just noticing your breathing. You took a nice deep breath after that. You took a few deep breaths. Wow, I'm curious how things are feeling now. Right? That simple little practice can morph into much more profound ways of tracking energy. So at first you're just wanting to start tracking, noticing, being aware of something outside of just the thinking dimension. So you got to be still enough in yourself. You're not so consumed up here, and just look, just track what's happening outside of this. So many of us are caught in our own head, right? Everybody's in their own little delusional bubble, right? And if you could step out of yourself for a moment and be really present, you can start to see these things. So if you want to learn to see deeper, you want to learn to start tracking energy more, you want to see the more subtle nuances of the physiology. And that's where you get into real magical like states of awareness. You start with the breath and see where that takes you. You can also start with trying to notice out of your periphery. A lot of times we'll notice more nuance out of the periphery because it requires us not to use this really heavy part of our brain that's uses a lot of energy, this thinking part of our brain that won't be able to perceive these subtle nuances. If all that seemed interesting to you and you like this video, you want to learn more about this work, about how to alchemize, transform trauma held in the body. You want to learn more about working with the nervous system, working with the soma, the body. Check out the link in the description. We have a free Heal Trauma bundle for you that also teaches you a lot of the basics of nervous system work. So how to be skillful with the nervous system. There's a lot of just somatic exercises out there of how to regulate your nervous system. Most of them are just down regulating your nervous system, and that's it. It's really easy to down regulate your nervous system. There's a lot of ways to do that. One is just to bring your attention outside of yourself, notice your environment, right? Be aware of the present moment. If there's no stress in the present moment, that'll downregulate your nervous system. So a lot of ways to get release. But in that program, the exercises I show you, the somatic release exercises, aren't just release exercises. They're actually getting your nervous system ready for deeper healing, deeper transformation. They're designed specifically to prime you for more fight, flight, completion, moving through trauma, letting it be a deeper healing than just kind of the simple relief that comes when you feel a little bit better, right? And then we also have a masterclass there for you too. So I highly recommend you check that out because that goes over a lot. And I get a lot of good feedback about that. People feel that they have transformative experiences with some of the little guided meditations. We bring them into the body. So highly encourage you to check that out. Don't forget to subscribe. It means a lot as I'm growing this channel. And like this video if you want the algorithm to know to send you more like this. All right, cool. I'll see you soon.